Are we ready to go, Ped?
I'm ready. I can't see Pat though. He's not behind the cameras.
Where is he?
Don't know.
Whoa.
Oh!
Wait, does that mean we're talking about Teslas?
Yeah, if you like. I mean,
no.
you now love electric cars.
Yeah.
Ioniq 5N, just saying.
Good to see you, Pat.
Easy now.
Easy now.
Easy now. Now it's nice having you on, mate.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the Drive Talk podcast, powered by Michelin. We are at the roastery at Podium Place again. I just like coming here because the coffee's great. But we
and the Sims are great, unless you lose like me.
Well, yeah, there is that. Yeah, yeah. If you tuned into the previous episode, we were about to go on the Sims. We've now been on the Sims, and yeah, let's not. You did all right. You did better than me.
We both lost.
Yeah,
Patrick won.
Did much better than me.
No.
This is treat.
So we've got Pat on firstly because we just didn't want him falling asleep behind the cameras, wanting to kind of earn his money a bit. But we wanted to talk about stuff around car shows, especially the high-end car shows and concours events. And Pat, not that Joe and I are jealous or anything, was recently out at Monterey Car Week.
Yeah, it was a pretty special experience.
Yeah.
It was probably and I feel like a salesman every time I say this, but it was probably the best 7 days of car-related activities.
Car related. I like the way you caveated that, just in case your missus was listening. But you know what? Even my mum, who obviously follows all of us on socials and stuff, even she messaged me saying, "Oh my God, that trip that Patrick's on tops everything I've ever seen."
Yeah.
So, and it's true, those pictures are just like,
I mean, it's quite good that you do take a good photograph. But
yes,
I mean, the stuff you had the opportunity to point a camera out there.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
A different level. I think there's a huge amount of factors that come into it. You've got quite a few formal events throughout the whole week, and then adding on to that, you've then got all these people with their cars over there. So they bring all their cars to one place. California's always lovely and sunny, so you don't have a problem there with weather and having your car out, unlike us in the UK.
Yeah, it's tragic weather out there.
Plus, then where you're based, so you're only just a little bit out of San Francisco and LA. Lots of money, lots of nice cars around there as well. And where you are in Monterey and Carmel, that area, there's like some of the best roads in the world. You've got Highway 1 all the way down to Big Sur. And the best thing at the moment, slight kind of double-edged sword, but there's a massive landslide that took place a few years ago, and they haven't fully finished fixing Highway 1 yet. So you quite literally have a road to nowhere, and then you have to turn around and come back. There's no turn-offs on the entire road.
oh, is that the one that you stopped at?
Yes, in that Tesla, talking of electric cars. So that's Highway 1. So that whole road is just one way. There's Big Sur on the way. It's a lovely place to go grab a coffee and stuff. But there really isn't anything on that road. So you have to go all the way to the end, which is maybe like 45-minute drive, and then you come all the way back again. So if you go up early enough in the morning, you can have a really fun drive, and there's no one there.
And on this trip, you just had a pretty average like rental or something, did you, Pat?
Well, I had booked a very average rental, and then Roger Chan, our good friend, who's a photographer and like journalist as well, with some of his written work, he managed to get a Lexus LX 600.
Yep.
So it also had the ultra luxury pack, like my LS 430. And what that meant is you had two like business class style seats in the back of the car.
Yeah. What are they called? Captain's chairs.
Captain's chairs, yeah.
But no, I mean, that's bling. But I was referring to your other very average rental car that then topped that one. Yeah,
so another thing with something like Car Week is that the people that you're around and the people that you get to enjoy the cars with also have access to very nice cars. So a now mutual friend of mine and Roger's had an 812 GTS in I think it's called Vintage Rose, which is a very historic old Ferrari color. And he was like, "Oh yeah, here's the keys," on one of our very early morning drives that we did. So it was pretty special. And they're not even like it's a fantastic car, but it just pales into significance of all of the other cars that are at Car Week and that are driving. Because one of the big things of the Pebble Beach concours is that you have to drive your car. There's an element of the concours itself is that your car has to be working and usable. So
that's so cool.
All of these cars on one of the mornings before the concours itself go out for a drive up to Big Sur, turn around and go back. And if your car doesn't make it, well then you're not considered for the big prize.
Just quick, because I've since I've been in YouTube, there's a whole bunch of our colleagues, YouTube colleagues, that go out to Monterey Car Week on a regular basis, Tim and Sam and so on. So it's a whole week of events. My worry would be I'd go out, I wouldn't know where the events were, what was on, and I'd not end up being at all the cool stuff. So is it one of those places where you really need to be like invited by someone or be with someone who's been before to kind of understand what's happening when?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough that Roger, our friend, went last year, and so he had kind of learnt the ropes and was able to then guide me.
Yeah.
Lots of the events are very premium. The entry tickets, like the Quail, where I got this hat from, is $1,500. It's a 1-day event.
Wow.
And that's per person.
And that's just a concours, right? That's a concours.
Yeah, that's a concours with manufacturers as well as kind of like resto-mod companies and stuff like that. You can get media access. I'm very fortunate to get media access, and me and Roger are actually working over there for a brand, so we were able to kind of capture the events they were attending to.
Hold on. Wind the clock back. This is going to really annoy me. So not only did you go to Monterey Car Week and have an amazing time, but you're getting paid to be there.
Getting paid to drive around, getting paid to swan around in someone else's 812.
Wow. Okay. Right. Yeah. The sympathy levels just dropped through the floor now.
The 812 is better than my 912 at the moment. So.
Yes.
We won't get onto that.
We will get onto that.
Yeah.
but,
Gearbox.
Yeah, but we don't. I mean, Pat, we all know how hard, and I know how hard, especially you were working up to that point, having to spend about 4 days in an office with me, listening to myself repeat myself, running around doing this, that, and everything else. And I think, we all love what we do as a living. We all share similar workplaces, especially with Michelin. We do a lot together. Yeah. But I think a lot of the time, as much as it's fun, it is work as well. And it's, it's very rare that you step away going, oh, that was just fun. That was fun, but wow, that was hard work. But I think this trip, I'm not saying you didn't work, but it was probably one of the first trips you've done in a while where you're like, that was awesome.
Yeah,
I worked.
A lot of pinch yourself moments, kind of the working events that we did were also fantastic. But like you said, it's work. So you're stressed and you're trying to get the shots or trying to deliver for a client. Yeah. But like I said, because of where it is and kind of how that week works, there's a lot of time to enjoy yourself, particularly if you don't mind, especially with jet lag, it's a lot easier. But getting up really early in the morning, going for a lovely drive. Like we did a drive one day in the Ferrari before an event. So the event, car event started at 10 a.m. or something. And we were able to go for a drive, come back, swap back into the Lexus and go to the event, arrive on time. Because, I did tell Roger, I was like, we can't turn up in the Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be like turning up to Silverstone to work in a Bentley or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think the really interesting thing, though, so if you listen to podcasts or interviews on YouTube, there's always YouTubers that get interviewed. We've had loads on the podcast. And they're the guys you see because they're in front of camera and they're making content. What I like about what you do, Pat, is that you do the same. You're just not in front of the camera, but without people like you, lots of the creators that we know wouldn't be able to do the content that they do. We wouldn't be able to put this podcast together without you. And it's just a really interesting, different look at the automotive content creation space. Yeah, that there are creators out there, and whether that's it's a bit like when we were at MotoGP, you were effectively running the Michelin Instagram page, creating reels and stories and stuff for Michelin. You wouldn't know it was you doing it, but all you see is the output, this really nicely edited creative content. And I think for the people listening, that's a really interesting space. There's people like me and Joe that are in front of the camera and hold the camera up and go, hey, look at me. But there's plenty of people like you that you don't even know. It's a bit like Roger as well, actually. Although Roger's probably more in front of the camera than
I think Roger's the sidetrack slightly. Roger's world of car spotters have all taken this interesting path into either commercial work, so being photographers and stuff, but also you see a lot of them now. You've got horsepower hunters and Roger and other people that are now like presenting content, becoming faces themselves. Because I think a lot of the skills are transferable. I mean, I personally don't see a world where I start my own YouTube channel and be on camera, because I know how much hard work it is just working with you guys and other people. Like I know how dedicated you have to be, and a lot of that dedication for you guys starts with passion. Now my passion is almost like already spent. Like I get to do the cool things anyway, and thus I don't have this like additional ambition like you guys might do during a normal day job to then go make content because you love it. Like I get to make the content already.
I'd stay doing what you're doing, mate, because you get paid every time we go to an event and we don't. Sympathy levels going really low here, by the way.
Yeah, we're like, is the video going to do well? And Pat's like, I don't really care. No, he does.
No, yeah. But yeah, so I think it's an interesting world. And going back to how Car Week works, we were prescribed or required to go to, I think, 4 different events. And throughout the week, so Monterey Car Week, as it's called, is kind of like what I would consider the overall organization or awareness of every event within that time frame. So Pebble Beach Concours is the core event at the end of the week. It's on the Sunday.
That's different to the Quail.
Yes, yeah. So the Pebble Beach Concours is the famous one on the golf course. It's where all of the pre-war cars are, where you go mince around in your fancy outfits and you talk about how well that car was restored and the provenance of it. And that's very like your high-end traditional concours. And the whole week is based around that historic event because that's been going on forever. The Peninsula Group, they have a hotel in London. They've got them around the world. But they have the Quail. The Quail is their motorsports gathering. So for them, that's their interpretation of an event. And if anybody knows anything about the Peninsula Group, they know that the people that run it and own it are huge petrol heads. Like some of the most petrol-headed like business, like all of their business decisions are based around the kind of motorsport or petrol head element of it. And that shines through in their event, which is the Quail, which has become like one of the more premier events of the week. That's kind of like, you know, your serious collectors and people, and brands go to that too. And we'll talk later about Restomods. The Tuttle GT1 was launched there. So the Quail is like another key event. There's a bunch of then kind of smaller events around that, either more bespoke or more like personal to certain brands. Lots of brands have what they call like houses over there. So quite literally a house, but it's like a $50 million house. And it's a hosting venue. So it's not a house for sleeping in, it's a house for hosting people. And if you want a private place, like me and Roger were lucky enough to go to the Pininfarina house. Roger was creating some content there for someone else that he works with. And that house had a selection of Pininfarina cars, lovely coffee, a place for lunch if you're imported enough. And you can go there, they kind of park your car out of the way and you get to walk around this, but it's a very quiet, closed off experience. There's maybe 5 or 10 people you see. It's not like a big public event that you can buy a ticket for. It's invitation only. So the whole event and the kind of clientele and the kind of cars that are available or shown means that you can have these really bespoke experiences kind of in between all of that. And because of, again, like I said before, about the fact that you're in California and stuff, it's a great excuse for someone to just spend a whole week out there, bring a car out, maybe collect a car, maybe see a new car they're ordering or buying. So yeah, it's a really special place, and yeah, the weather and the location helps a lot.
Very nice. Now, I went to a show that wasn't Monterey Car Week, but it's kind of one of the UK equivalents, really. I went to Salon Prive, and really interesting. We're going to talk about Restomods later, but the Tut Hill car, so the GT1 and the 911K that were both at Monterey were at Salon Prive. They'd flown them back, especially. And Salon Prive is quite an interesting one because they've got a whole. I know it's a whole week, but it's certainly like 4 or 5 days of stuff. They've got a full-on concours for the first couple of days. I think the winner this year was a 330 GTO Ferrari that was worth 50 million quid or something. And then they have, on the Friday, they don't call it Ladies' Day, but it's a smaller number of guests that come in, and there's all the cars on display and everyone dresses up in the refinery. It's one of the first motor events that I was invited to by Lockton Performance, who I work with, and Tracy came as my guest.
I saw that.
And she absolutely loved it. She was like, what's it going to be like? I went, just come along.
Is that high praise for the event? Did she?
Oh, she
come back for the second year?
Yeah, she wants to go back. So it was the nice thing about the Friday is there's not that many people there. There were lots of really cool cars to look at. We had really lovely lunch. The food was great. Lockton, they gave us amazing hospitality. It's funny though, she had her events hat on and she's like, do that better. And
I was going to ask
that
you,
hospitality's not great.
Does she critique events in that way?
Yeah.
Almost hard not to, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and you know, that's her job, and that's what she's very, very good at. And you know, give her the reins of that, and she'd make it even better. But that was really nice. And then on the Saturday, I was there with Lockton, but judging the car club concours. I mean, it's that they basically all the different car clubs that came on the Saturday. So that's things like Ferrari Owners Club GB, Porsche Owners Club GB. There's like maybe 6 or 7 different car clubs. They all selected, of the 1,500 or so cars that came, they selected the best 2 cars from each car club. So we had 20 cars that we had to then have one. And I've never judged before, and it was quite interesting. The guy who's the head judge is a very well-known concours judge, so he was kind of giving us what we need to look at, and it was a really interesting thing because I'd go up there, tell me, I like the look of that one, but there's loads more to it than just what the car looks like. It's the story, it's the restoration, to win, you have all of those things have to be there really.
Do you get additional points for having like an advanced driver's license or?
Well, one of them did have an IAM badge on the car. Yes.
Oh, I bet you that car got
I'm going to tick
extra
that on
point
my
for
list.
that.
Yeah. In fact, one of the Lamborghinis of the two Lamborghini, he was a subscriber of mine, so he got extra brownie points for that. So, but no, it was really, really interesting. The only problem was we ended up with two cars that we couldn't split. One was a DB6, a 1967 Aston Martin DB6, and if you think in your head, think of what a concours car would look like. That was it. It was perfect, beautiful. But the guy hadn't done it himself. He'd bought it like that, so he'd only had the car since the beginning of the year. And then the other one was a Noble M600.
Oh.
One of only two carbon-bodied cars that they ever made.
Is that because they couldn't sell them or they didn't sell them?
Well, or they now crashed probably.
Oh.
Well, so the car new was just shy of £300,000. Okay, but it was the exposed carbon-bodied car, and that was an optional extra. Okay, and it was an extra £250,000.
I was just about to say it's double the price almost. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So we ended up giving two trophies away. We said to the guys at Salon Prive, "We've got a spare trophy hanging around." They went, "We have actually."
Yeah.
So we had one pre-80 car and one post-80 car.
Okay.
But it was it's those types of events. I think the thing I like about Salon Prive is that normal car clubs come along and it's open to the public on the Saturday, and there's much bigger crowds, and you walk around and there's all kinds of things there, and these two things led to what we wanted to have a chat about this week, and that's just the subject of resto-mods. Because you walk around, is he looking at Joe?
No. I was gonna quickly ask Joe his opinion of concours and car events, because I think me and Pete have spoken quite positively about them.
Yeah. No. I mean, they're not my. I must admit, I've been to Salon. I've been to what's the other? I was going to use the W word. Then they're all a bit W wordy for me a lot of the time, full of people that I wouldn't necessarily want to hang around with.
So the reason I kind of skirted over that was just so we did. So the other one,
but
Hampton Court. There's one down
Hampton
there.
Court. That's the one. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's my idea of fun. I just, but I like what you went to because people are actually using the car. What annoys me about those events is it's just static, boring. Look at me. This is how big my wallet is. Look at me. My wallet's even bigger. And look at me. My wallet's even bigger. And I polished my one, not this one, that one, earlier today 15 times.
Would you say, and I think this is where, to move on to other car events, where someone like Goodwood really strikes like a fine balance.
Yeah.
Is you've got Festival of Speed,
Yeah.
where there is the equivalent or the feeling of like a concours where you're presenting your best car, more race than road, but there is an opportunity to put out your best cars.
Ducati Stile Lux is one of
is one of the big
ones
concours.
that there was.
But then you've also got Revival as well, and that's one of the things I went to an
That's
event.
this weekend. Are you going to that bed?
Do you know? I'm going to the party in the evening on Saturday. I'm not actually going during the. I've decided that, well, one, the weather's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But I've got something on the Saturday. I'm coming back here on Saturday for an event briefly.
Yeah.
But I'm not going for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never ever been actually, but yeah.
You were just saying about obviously what I was saying about Car Week and how people actually drive the cars.
Yeah.
I think for me, I was talking to some people about concours events in general. I was at an event at the Peninsula, London, a few days ago where they were judging. They have a thing called Best of the Best, where they take the 8 biggest concours events of the year in the world, and then they determine through their judges like which one they award the best car from the best concours event.
Right.
So they're kind of whittling down. Everybody has their pick across the world, and then they come along and they pick it. And I was super intrigued by, like you said, there's a lot of cars where people just spend lots of money. They don't use them. They're mint. They're perfect. And that's cool and all. But I'd much rather a car. And actually the car that won Pebble Beach this year was a preservation car. And it's the first time the Pebble Beach Concours, I have to get this right, the Pebble Beach Concours was won by a preservation car. So this was...
What's a preservation car?
I won't give the model because I can't remember what it is and I'll get it wrong. But it was a very old Bugatti.
Yep.
And it'd never been restored.
Oh,
It's
okay.
always been maintained but never restored, to the
Okay.
point where it was a traditional Bugatti blue car when it first came off the factory floor. And then I think like a prince or someone royal in Austria bought it, and they decided they wanted to paint it their colors because it's got like race pedigree and stuff. So he just literally got a paintbrush by the looks of the way it's been done and just painted it black, and then just put like a stripe on it with another paintbrush yellow, and it's terribly done. Like, it's awful.
Yeah.
But that car, I spoke to the owner. I was introduced to the owner, and that car, he was doing Big Sur and back, so like an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half round trip journey twice a day.
Wow.
During car week.
Wow.
In
And
what
wait,
is
how
like-
old is this?
I'd probably get that wrong as well. But
Talking
like
30s or something.
yeah, what's the Bugattis that've got like the wheels outside of the arches, like that level of
that'd be
Bugatti,
30,
like a
35.
35 or something. But it's
Wow.
the first time that, because Pebble is a very, like, as you said, a W word event
Yeah.
where people are in suits and hats and, you know, got advanced driving licenses and stuff. But
Tell you what, right? You can become very unpopular sometimes. It's not. We invited you on the pod to be nice to me.
No, keep it going, Pat. Keep it going.
yeah, and they have their
It's called
Sparko
bullying,
shoes
by the way.
on. And,
Just saying.
but no, so this Bugatti is the first time a preservation car, a car that hasn't been restored.
Yeah.
It's just been looked after. The car is maintained like immaculately,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
mechanically rather than aesthetically.
Yeah.
And that car won that award. And I think, at least in my head moving forward, where these cars are going to become, well, pre-war cars are going to become, I think, less relevant because our generation aren't going to buy pre-war cars. I have no interest in those. So anything you do buy, I would rather have it have a story and like be able to drive it and use it.
Yeah.
And like that to me has a greater value than it being perfect.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the cars you see as well, like there was another car that was a Ferrari that's been restored and it's immaculate, but it used to be a race car. And my point was like, well, that car wouldn't have rolled off the production line looking like that.
No.
Yeah.
A race car Ferrari from the 60s would have been awfully built
Yeah.
because they were just getting them off to race them. They're great cars and they won races and stuff, but there's no way they're
You know
like
that
concours
sentence
level.
with a race car Ferrari from the 60s? Okay.
Yeah.
Just would be awfully built. Just remove the race car from the 60s
Yeah.
from that sentence, and that'd be about right.
Although they won at Monza.
They
well,
did.
yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Anything with the starts with MON, Charles Leclerc tends to win.
Yes, this is true.
But yeah, so I think there's a world where these car events need to. I think the cars will obviously get newer. You know, a McLaren F1 at some point win a concours.
Yeah.
But I think the way you have Goodwood displaying cars and showing cars driving and stuff,
Yeah.
that to me is like the better value. I would rather a car win a concours that is used every day than a car that gets used once a year, wheeled out and.
I think,
shown off
I think,
immaculate
I mean,
condition.
we've talked about Goodwood lots and we've been there lots. And I mean, Ped lives there basically. But I think Goodwood is amazing at what it does because, okay, we've probably talked negatively about them recently because of all the Chinese brands, electric cars that are there that maybe aren't appealing to the Goodwood customer. But Festival of Speed, obviously, I'm talking about. But there's no denying that Goodwood, anything you want is at Goodwood, right?
Yeah.
It's going to tick a couple of boxes for every single person that's in the cars.
Well, the revival. I mean, you think,
And then you got the revival,
cars that you would have at Pebble Beach or Salon Prive in a concours event. You know, a 250 GTO. You'll see them racing wheel to wheel with other cars. You know, in the Kinrara Trophy or the TT Trophy. You know, the combined value of the grid's probably 200-300 million quid.
Yeah.
And they're racing toe to toe. So, yeah, no, definitely. It was one of the interesting conversations I had when we were judging those two cars because the obvious winner was the DB6, and I said, well, that is, but if you want to appeal to a younger audience,
Talking of cars that might win concourses in the future.
hello,
What's that? That's an art.
Arthur.
That's a Skyline 4-door though.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a one that's meant to look like one.
No, that's definitely that's a 2.7.
It did sound really good,
V6.
though. Yeah, no, you want to appeal to a
V6,
younger audience, then that's what that that Noble M600 does. Because
Yes.
there will come a time, like you said, where a more modern car. I mean, one of the cars that was put forward was this beautiful 5,000th anniversary Countach, and it was immaculate. The owner wasn't there when we were judging, so we had nobody to talk to, so we didn't judge it. Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go. That's a podium place car.
Oh, is it? What a surprise! Yeah.
Well, hang on. That might be the mule, no?
Oh no,
No,
the mule.
isn't
No, well,
No?
I think the mule will look like a Jaguar.
I don't know.
More on that.
I've never seen it. Yeah.
Right.
Everyone's like they've gone all cryptic. What is
It's like,
going
what
on?
are you talking about?
Especially if you're listening to it
Come
on a podcast.
I know.
You know,
So talking about what, if you're listening, don't forget, give us a follow. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button.
Yeah.
thumbs up, comments, all of that stuff.
We're a handful away from 7,000.
I know. Come on, we need to get there. In fact, we need much higher than that.
Yeah.
So let's have a chat about resto-mods, because my when I was walking around Salon Prive, one of the comments was mentioned about the fact that Tracy really, really enjoyed it. One of the comments was that even Trace was like, which are the old cars and which are the new cars? Because we had a look at Morgan, and she's like, oh, that's an old one. Well, no, that's actually a brand new +6.
Yeah.
And then we had a look at an old 911, and she goes, well, that's obviously an old 911. I went, no, that's a brand new resto-mod. And it's quite confusing. That thing does sound great, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the whole resto-mod scene, I don't know who was first, but I'm gonna kind of start the conversation around Singer and 911 and the kind of recreation that they've done on obviously a number of different types of 911. But would it be fair to classify a resto-mod as a company decides that they're going to bring an older, in inverted commas, classic car up to modern day standard to make it better than the original? They take the old car, they gut it, bare metal respray, maybe even brand new bodywork, and then they stick a new engine in it, and new suspension, and trim it with all the most lovely materials ever, make it look amazing, and then sell it for millions of pounds.
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah, I'd say that's a good description.
I've got a slightly different take, and I'll try not to make this too long, but it does actually connect into one of the things we'll talk about in a bit. But my understanding of resto-mod, at least for me, would have started with people like Magnus Walker.
Yeah.
So
individuals that take cars, and irrelevant of the value that it either adds or subtracts, makes them bespoke to them.
Yeah.
And I think in the world that we live in now, we always talk about how boring or how kind of
samey.
Yeah, how similar modern cars are. That actually, for me, resto-mods, and that's the why I bought the 912, was because I watched a Magnus Walker take these cars, and from a collector perspective, from a value perspective, ruin them. Like, he made them for him. He put louvers on them. He changed parts. He painted them in a certain way, none of which, came from factory and wasn't present and correct, and would never win a concours event, because that's not the point.
Especially back then. Whereas nowadays they might actually go, they might entertain
so
that.
Restomods for me started with individuals doing things irrelevant of value, but just because they can and they wanted to, and they enjoyed that.
Where does that cross over from the modification car scene, which we've talked about before, and this term resto-mod? Is that when you're kind of taking an old car and trying to restore it to better than factory?
I think modifying a car.
And where I'd love to know if anyone's listening to this or watching and they know the origins of, we should have Googled this probably, the origins of resto-mod. Was it associated with our car? Because often these things are maybe a strap line from somebody's marketing. I'm thinking of things like the Alfa Romeo Alfaholics. I don't know whether that kind of thing was maybe the tag of
well, maybe like I'm trying to work out how you define that. Modifications would be take an existing car that works completely fine, there's nothing wrong with it, and then modify it, so you just add things, but you don't even have to make it better, you can just change it. Resto-mod is taking a car that would inherently be either like needing a restoration anyway, and then like making it your own. So I know Magnus Walker would take his old cars, and none of them were like concours cars that he then went and ruined or changed or modified. But instead he was restoring them, but rather than restoring them to factory, he restores them to however he wants. So yeah, I think it's a super interesting space, and there's an irony that people like Magnus Walker that did that for himself, they became so cool that they actually became more valuable rather than less valuable. And then that leads us onto all of the brands today that do the same thing, and those cars are way more expensive. You don't buy a car and then do these things and it's worth less than the base car. They're now worth huge amounts more.
No, and one of the things that triggered this conversation for me at Salon Prive, I was, there's loads of Porsche-based resto-mods. I think of all the cars that have been taken up in the resto-mod space, it's got to be, 911, right?
Yeah, which is kind of ironic in its own sense, because we've all driven a lot of 911s, maybe not that many older ones, but they're all brilliant. And so you think, in one way, it's like, okay, well, of course they're not all, the old.
Hold on a minute. I'm going to be controversial here. In modern day, I'm going to say, I'm going to scratch at 996, but post 997, they are all pretty spot on. Before that, there were some ropey ones.
Oh, 993, very good.
Yeah. But
yeah, and ironically 964 I think was, and 964 values, nobody wanted 964s. Nobody cared about. Nobody wanted until, I don't know if it was Magnus so much because
No, he did earlier because he was doing like 70s, late 60s, 70s.
It was until Singer, and then suddenly, because that's why theirs were all based on 964s originally, weren't they? And so all of a sudden, guess what? 964s, even ones that are basically scrap value, have got big value, because you talked about it over lunch, because suddenly it's like you buy a horrible bungalow that's falling over and spend a fortune on it. Why? Because it's on a plot of land that has got loads of amazing potential to build a really nice bungalow or house on afterwards. It's the same with these, isn't it? You're buying the skeleton, you're buying that VIN number, whether it's a 964, whatever. So that's a whole nother conversation. But it's really interesting because it's making some of these models that weren't so popular, that weren't so great back in the day, but suddenly these used, tattered old things are worth an absolute fortune because they are the donor cars that you hand over to someone like Singer, or less so.
I mean, there's so many. We were going through just the 911 ones. Obviously, Singer's the top of the tree, but you've got Rennsport, Rough, Tough Hill,
Auto
Theon, Auto Farm. Shout out to Auto Farm.
Yeah.
Hopefully, going to come and do some stuff with you. So there's loads and loads of them, but some of them, they're like the spectrum of. Some of them just make it a better car in terms of sorting out the suspension, modern set of brakes, tweaking the engine, and then tidying everything up so it looks nice. But if you were to look at some of them, the detailing, when you open up the engine bay, and the engines, they don't look anything like the engine did in the 911.
No, they're completely
They've got these trumpets and all this beautiful stuff on it. But the thing that I don't know whether it's just going too far. There's almost too much choice, and the cost of some of them. And I'm gonna mention Theon because it was a car that I looked at Salon Prive. I thought it was a beautiful Targa, looked amazing, great colour. Tracy just loved it. Absolutely. We were talking about it on the way home. She said, that car was so lovely. And I went, yeah, that's going to be a lot of money though. I think that's going to be £250,000. She's like, really? I went, yeah, I mean, they're expensive, those Restomods. Next day I'm back there and I get chatting to the guy from Theon, and the car, I went, beautiful car, that detailing's amazing. I said, how much do they start at? £250? He went, 5. £500,000.
Yeah, it's
but
then that compared with the Singers, cheap, right?
Yeah, because now you can't buy a Singer for less than £1 million, and if you actually want one yourself, you're going to have to buy a DLS or a DLS Turbo, and they're like, we're talking millions at that point. But I think there's another point as well we missed maybe, and this might help us kind of define modifications to Restomods, is a lot of the Porsche stuff I think also spawned out of the fact that people like the classic ones. I own a classic one. It's nothing but a massive headache. Like, my car doesn't work. The gearbox is broken. Even though I just rebuilt the engine. So the classic cars aren't really that usable. However, you can backdate a 964 or a 993 or whatever base car you want. Auto Farm do this. This is what Singer does as well. A Singer car looks like a wide-body modified 70s car, but the car's from what, like the 80s or the 90s? Like, it's so I think a part of resto-modding as well is taking a very usable, much more reliable car and making it look like a cool classic that you wish you could just buy the classic base car in the first place, but you'd never be able to use it.
It's almost like putting all your dream ingredients together, isn't it? Like, you look at a Singer, like you said, it's the most beautiful looking Porsche that kind of never existed. And that's why they're called reimagined by Singer, because that is effectively what they do. They take what is a great base car or has a huge audience, and then rebuilds that into something that Porsche could never have made because they don't have a time machine. They can't. But then you do get Porsche also, like modern day Porsche, things like, what was the Sport Classic? And I know the original Sport Classic was theirs, but it's also, I think, and Porsche would probably not admit this, but I think it has opened this special market for them, so they can throw a Sport Classic on the market for 300 grand or whatever it was, and people won't even bat an eyelid. If they'd done that a few years ago, like the original Sport Classic, people were like, I remember they couldn't sell the original.
Why would you have one of
was
those?
it, 2010 or something back then? So we're only talking 15 years ago. Everyone was like, oh no, what, you're going to spend an extra 50 grand just to have a ducted? Oh no. But now what are they worth? £500,000 or something. And I think you look at things like the ST, there's no way that the ST would have been made and developed unless there was this whole crazy resto-mod scene going on where people happily go, there's £2 million or euros or whatever. I think Porsche, and they haven't done it, in my opinion, they haven't done it to take the piss with pricing. They are expensive, but they've done it still at a, you look at an ST and I don't know what they retail at, 250, 260.
Yeah,
I think before, obviously you can't pick one up like that for now, but you look at it and you think, well, I can see where the 200 grand's gone in that. Like, that is worth it for sure. I mean, getting one is another thing altogether. But it is interesting that it's kind of, it's forced, or not forced, but it's showing the manufacturers, the original people, Porsche, that actually we can make some really cool modern stuff and put some tax on it, and people are going to buy it. And
I think that's where a lot of manufacturers will have to go. We talk about electric cars a lot, and they're all like the same platform, right? And you just put a different body on top.
Yeah.
But like, that's what cars used to be like back in the day.
Yeah.
You get a Rolls Royce engine and like framework, and then you go get the Michelin Park Ward body put on top of it.
Yep.
And so
there's full circle.
And so there's no reason why, like, is it called Cindervash? What's the Porsche bespoke? It's called Cinder something.
Oh, out at Stuttgart where
So there's no reason why they can't be like, okay, well, we can do a backdate 992.
Yeah.
Because they're Porsche, so they can do whatever they like.
Yes.
And they can say, do you want a GT3 like touring, but it looks like a 996? I mean, I'm not saying anybody wants that, but they can do whatever they like. It's Porsche, right?
Yeah.
So, but that'll be like a one-off car. It's €1 million, and if Singer can charge €1 million, and so can Porsche,
of course.
And like they haven't done it yet, but I can see in this electric world where everything, like I said, it is a platform.
Yeah.
You can build whatever you want. And actually, remembering about some of the conversations I had, Pininfarina are doing exactly that now.
Yep.
So Pininfarina Automobili, so the car side, not the design side, they have that platform, which is based off a Rimac, I think, that electric hypercar platform.
Yep.
And the designer was explaining they've had a Targa car made as a one-off for a customer. And they said, as long as it is within like the crush regulations and the country's regulations, you can pretty much ask them to do whatever you like.
Yeah.
And they will redesign it on top of that platform as long as it's all roughly the same, whatever you want. And this one customer said, I want a Targa car. They made a one-off Targa car. Now that costs a lot of money, but that's a very top-end example. But I can't see why other manufacturers for an extra 50 or 100 grand
what Jensen Button and Ansett have done with Radford.
Yeah.
They've just gone to Lotus and they basically coach built a body on top of a Lotus.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the I don't know whether it's just gone too far or whether it's just got loads of legs left. There's loads of cars I can think of. I wish they'd bring that back. I mean, the Evoluto, which is the 355, that was launched at Festival of Speed, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one because that's based on a Ferrari 355. And the bit that amazes me, and I know we were chatting about it over lunch, Porsche have had a sad-on with a couple of things Singer have done, but Ferrari are known for
they're
cease and
litigious
desist
to another
letters,
level.
right?
Yeah.
So
us just saying Ferrari on this podcast probably going to get
so the guys that are involved in that Evoluto project did loads of pre-legwork legally to try and preempt any kind of activity from the Ferrari legal department, and they've resto-modded the 355, and you could argue that 355 for me is one of the best Ferraris they've ever made. It was just like mega nightmare to own because you had to take the engine out to do everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, how good that car going to be?
Yeah.
I don't know how much they cost, but a lot.
Well, I think that might be the problem with all of this, because of us three here, would all of us own a resto mod? Probably, because like I said, it becomes like a usable classic or a car that's better than the original.
Yeah.
But could any of us afford a resto mod in today's market? No.
Well,
That's
where
the problem now.
But is that not where there's an opportunity to resto mod? Maybe not the kind of supercar, high-end sports cars, but a more there's a whole modern classic movement of people of our age, not you, Pat, because you're younger than us, but cars, really cool cars from the 80s and 90s, like 205 GTIs or Renault 5 GT turbos or Escort Cosworths, those types of things.
Yep.
There's a huge market to kind of bring those things back to life.
Well, I also think there's different levels of it, because we met Rengineering at Boxengasse.
Oh yeah, that amazing Boxster.
Yeah. And I think that's That's
great.
Oh,
they
I
came
see
in.
what you've done here.
Make sure you watch our episodes from Box and Gas and Megaphonics.
I'm sorry.
Joe has a few issues spotting the difference. What is the difference between a Cayman
It was
and a
Paul,
Boxster?
wasn't it?
It's the
Paul
leg
from
room's the
engineering,
difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
And if you haven't checked out engineering, definitely check out. He's got a podcast and everything.
Amazing Boxster.
Really, but that to me is like that's like a watered, no offense, but it's like a watered down version of resto-modding, because it's a fairly modern car, especially by lots of other standards, but it's improving and making it special and unique and adding his own flavour to it that's obviously available to the customer.
Done it lovely.
Yeah, and I think it's since around that time, I think I mentioned on the last podcast, I'm looking at a 987 Boxster. I don't know why, I've just got this itch to scratch, and I really like them. I think 10 grand will get you a tidy one now. But then straight away I was like, well, what would I do with it? And there are a few little details that you could do with that car to make it your own, make it a bit more special, make it more desirable on the used market, not less desirable like it would have been in the past if you change a few things. And I think so there's different levels. And then what's interesting for me as we're sitting here talking about this is actually a brand that we went to go and see at Goodwood. Was Zenvo. We went on the Zenvo stand, right? So what, in a way, it's like, I think there's a fine line between, because you've got these amazing companies like Zenvo that are making these just absolute pieces of art that are just, I mean, they're well above my head in terms of anything I've ever driven or looked at or could ever afford in my life, even if I won the lottery. But they are masterpieces. They're beautiful. But in a way, they're not too dissimilar to what a really good resto-mod is, are they?
No.
Okay, they're not based on anything that we know, but actually they're very similar, because under the skin they're beautiful. They're art, but they're more modern art. Whereas resto-mods is a resto.
For me, it's like the interior detailing, the switch gear, the pedal boxes, the
Nothing's
seat,
left
the upholstery.
unturned. Yeah.
But then there's an argument to be made there that also then takes away from what the original car was. A good example, not that I've driven one or probably will ever drive one or be any closer than just looking at one, but like a 911K, so the Tuthill car, it's all carbon fiber. All of the bodywork's carbon fiber. I remember Chris Harris walked around and pointed at things like the wheels are carbon fiber, even though they look like Fuchs.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying that makes the car worse in any way.
Yeah.
But like, at what point, and a few brands have come into this, Tuthill with the new GT1.
Yep.
It's not called a Porsche anything. It's just called the Tuthill GT1.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because like, at what point does that car not become a Porsche? If you rebuild a Porsche and backdate it and then change every single panel to be carbon fiber rather than aluminium or steel or whatever it was originally, is that still a Porsche? Or what is it then? Because that's when a Zenvo is like, well, if you're doing all that development and effort, why don't you just build a car from scratch like Zenvo have done?
So that's an amazing segue into what happens here at Podium Place, about 300 the workshop that in the early versions of or early episodes of the podcast, when we were in the Podium paddock and you could hear the workshop in the background. So that's a project that's being done here at Podium Place with TWR. So with Fergus Walkinshaw, who's Tom Walkinshaw's son. So Tom Walkinshaw being the guy famous for bringing the Le Mans title back to Jaguar and racing XJSs in the 80s. And they're doing a resto-mod based on a Jaguar XJS, but it's not a Jaguar XJS.
Oh, I didn't know this. What is it?
Well, it is, but then it's a TWR.
Yes.
It's like the Tuthill GT. So it
won't be called a Jaguar XJS by
no.
TWR.
TWR.
TWR
Supercat.
Yeah.
So it's based on, they take an XJS body, but I don't know, we're going to be doing a podcast with them, so we'll find that deep dive into all of the details. It's got a supercharged V12, which will be derived, I'm sure, from a Jaguar engine, but it will when you look at them, and we've seen renders and so on, when you look at one, you go, that's Jaguar XJS, that. And it's not, and they'll never call it a Jaguar because it's not a Jaguar.
Yep.
It's a modern day recreation, if you like, of what that could be. It's going to be called a TWR.
I wonder what the V5 says. Because that's an interesting question with, like, I talk about like crash structures and stuff with Pininfarina, but if you change a car too much, it can't be called what the original car was, even if you've got the VIN number. It's got
I
a.
don't know how that
yeah,
works.
but and I know I should know this because we did.
I mean, maybe
we had
it's a
loads of
question
this
for
when
the podcast with them.
we
but
had loads of
it's
this
super
with
interesting.
vintage voltage because
Really?
a lot of the questions with vintage voltage when you take the engine out and replace it with an electric motor,
Yep.
how do you get it through its MOT? Well, there's certain things you can change certain things and you can't change. You can make so many changes,
Yep.
and it still can be classified on the V5 as a whatever it was originally.
Okay.
But the thing I love about the TWR project is, firstly, I think it's gonna be an epic thing.
Yep.
You know, the renders look amazing, and again, that's a collaboration. Magnus Walker and your mate
Kaiser.
Kaiser
Kaiser.
have been involved in the aesthetics and the design work. You've got Ferguson, his TWR team, doing all of the suspension, engine, and so on. Michelin doing the development with the tyres.
Wow.
So it's going to be an amazing car, but it starts from like 250 grand, 230 grand.
Yep.
It's not a £1 million car, and I think it's going to knock them all into a cocked hat because it's not silly money.
It's amazing when you actually stop and think about that. I mean, we talked about that Macan that's out there at the moment.
Yeah.
That's 100 odd grand's worth. It's a great car, but it's a mass production like SUV. Okay, it's cool, it's a Porsche, but to think that that's only 2.5 times the price of that, and it's completely bespoke. It's been hand built. You know,
And I think they're making. I can't remember. It's 87 of them, I think, because it's in reference to the 1980. Was it 88 winning of Le Mans? The year they won Le Mans. That's how many they're going to make.
Very cool.
But you're right, and I know we probably have to just quantify. We're saying only £250,000.
Okay, hang on,
In this conversation, that
talking millions.
normal money, where I know we've got people struggling to pay rent and stuff. That we're all just suddenly won the lottery when we can say it's only £250,000.
You've got to consider the clientele buying it. Like, what's a normal? And I say normal again because supercars aren't normal.
Yeah.
But like, what's a normal supercar now?
I mean, you couldn't buy an MC20 for that.
No, it's 250 to 300.
Even
grand.
a 296 Ferrari's 200 more.
Yeah, 200 to 300 again.
Yeah.
Like
So-
all of that. It used to be 100 something. Now it's 200 something. So
And like a lot of these things, that's a from price. So you can tailor it and bespoke it and add your own lovely bits. And I'm sure a bit like that Noble M600 I mentioned. If you want a carbon fiber body, you can add a couple $100,000 to the price maybe.
Yeah.
But that I think that's a really interesting Restomod project because it's got all the hair. It's not like just a couple of Fred in his shed building something. There's a massive amount of credibility in the team that have done the TWR project. And big shout out to John and Fergus and the team. We were talking to John earlier on before the pod. But I think that, when he told me what the pricing was going to be, I was like, well, that makes sense to me.
Reasonable. Yeah.
I still don't get how an old like 930 Targa can be 500 grand. And the one I really don't get, and we were chatting about it at lunchtime, whether it's not really a resto-mod, but the ProDrive Subaru.
Yeah. 22B.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And they're £500,000.
Yeah. See, I do get that. I understand. To me, that is a very, like, if I had £500,000 to spend in the car, that would be very high towards.
that car will drive like the best car you've ever driven.
It'll be like a works rally car.
It'd be
right?
better than-
engineering.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Also, like Patrick said at lunch, I know what you're saying, Ped, but also with that Subaru, it's built at ProDrive, who are the guys and girls that built the original and still do. They, and so we all know that's going to be even better than a Singer in terms of like the way it drives, the way it's.
But you spend your whole life justifying the fact that it was £500,000
on a Subaru. Yeah.
So for most people, and I don't know, I've never driven it. I would, if anyone from ProDrive is listening, we would love to come and do a podcast at ProDrive and get to drive the car.
Yeah.
But if you spent £100,000 on a Subaru, right, you get a P1, and then spend some money on it, that's still going to drive ace, right?
Oh yeah. No, I know.
If you watch Henry Catchpole's video of him driving it, it's like, okay, it's quite good then.
Yeah.
But I think we are in a world now where, these cars have become much more available as a viewer to watch and you guys experience and other people experience, but also to buy, like the wealth that's come out and is now visible, and people buy cars to flaunt their wealth a bit more than they used to. The world's your oyster. You can buy anything. Like people that have $1 million budget now don't just buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or like a McLaren. They can now buy like a Tuttle or a Singer or an Everati if they want. They can buy an electric conversion. They can buy anything. And
Everati.
also,
Have they sold any cars?
there was one. There was a festival.
Oh wait, Ped's probably worked with them before.
No, I haven't actually. No, the one I want to drive their GT40 because they've got a super performance GT40 that they electrified with 4 motors and 800 horsepower. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
The question I've got, here's a question. So, do you think, and I don't know whether there's any research been done on this, that the average resto-mod that is bought to be driven rather than you spend that kind of money on a supercar? Which one do you think gets driven more? I guess as a price point, if you're buying something like, my gut feel says if you're buying something like a Rennsport or a Auto Farm or something of that kind of, you're going to drive the wheels off it.
Yeah.
Right? If you're buying a Singer, it's going to sit in the garage.
No, a Singer is to tell your friends and show your friends. Singer's like buying a fancy watch with diamonds in it. You could have bought the one without diamonds, and it does the exact same thing. I think at a level, at a point.
So wait, you saying that it gets driven or it doesn't get driven?
No, it doesn't get driven. I'm
Yeah,
saying
go
you're
to
buying
clutch,
it
just
so
sit
you
in the
can say
garage.
you've got one.
But it seems mad in my head. I don't understand where the line, because it's like we all love driving our cars, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even Ped drives his Boxer now. I used to get really paranoid about the mileage.
I still do.
Yeah. Do you?
I still do. I've just realised I've lost shitloads of money, so I don't care anymore.
Yeah, just and so that's that's at our level. Then you go, but I think if you've got £2-3 million spent on a Singer, then if you've got that kind of money, then you've got hundreds of millions in the bank minimum, right? Or 25-30 million minimum. So just drive the thing.
Okay,
Use
I'll ask you both the same question. You can both answer me. How many Singers have you seen driving on the road? Like with your own eyes, not at a
car show.
So
Unless I'm
you just
in
driving
and
down
around
the
a car
road,
show.
and there's just
Never,
a Singer that drives
never.
past.
I might have.
I'll even allow you like a car park of a car event. So it's not at the car event, but it's in the, which means they drove it there. How many Singers have you seen?
My only caveat I'm going to add to that is I probably have, because of where I live. On my road that goes past my house, you get lots and lots of exotics going to Goodwood and back. Whether there's Supercar Sunday or events.
Do you actually vividly remember seeing one?
No, because I'd have probably just gone, oh, look at that nice 911 or whatever. It's difficult to know unless it's the really funky one. What's the really?
There might.
Yeah,
don't even know if they've been delivered yet, but I've never seen one of those. No. The only place I've ever seen Singers drive on the road, because up until going to Monterey Car Week, I'd never seen a Singer on the road.
Yeah,
I must have seen like 6. Wow. Just driving around just every day. And there was things I didn't even know what they were. I mean, Roger knew what they were, but they were like modified resto-mod stuff. Yeah. So I think there is definitely a level of clientele and a place in the world and the right weather and conditions where, like, of course you're going to get your Singer because you're about to meet all your mates who've also got Singers, and you're going to go, oh, my one's got this and my one's got that.
Yeah.
But I think you're not getting in that car every day. It's, Joe's come round, I'll show Joe my Singer, let's go for a drive. Yeah. It's not I just fancy going out on a Sunday, let's take my Singer. Yeah. I think you actually probably would have something modern for that because you can also afford a Singer. So.
I mean, the fair dues though, that I'm sure we all know of people. I know a couple of people who got really, really nice cars and they drive them all the time. The Valkyrie I went in, the guy who owns that, he's out in it every weekend. Yeah. And he's mates with another guy who's got a amazing collection.
Jet Collector guy.
So he's Jet Collector who drives a Valkyrie, and then Andy 47B who's got an amazing,
some serious cars.
Amazing set of cars. Yeah. And he's out and he drives them all the time.
Yeah, but does he drive them for what they're meant for? Or does he drive them so he can show people that he's got a Valkyrie?
No.
Because a Valkyrie to me.
How do you use a Valkyrie?
Well, a Valkyrie, the only use for a Valkyrie is track, because it's absolutely useless.
Could you imagine putting
horrible?
Did you see Fernando Alonso's one broke down in Monaco?
Yeah.
Well, he collected it in the same day it broke down. Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's an Aston Martin, so of course it's going to break down. But seriously, that's what I mean about your mate driving one. That's great, but he's not driving it. You're getting no pleasure from driving that on the road because it's horrible. It's noisy. It's tight, and the cabin, everything about that car is awful. It's only good on track. So he's only driving that car, as far as I'm concerned, to be seen that he's driving his Valkyrie. And so he can go see his mate who's also got a Valkyrie, and they can drive around together.
I mean, you would have to be you'd have to be quite a baller to track one a lot, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but then you're a baller to buy one because they're like 3 million quid. So I think that the track element's not a problem. I think there's a better question here, which is, I got two questions. We'll go with this one first. At what power or price point does a car become wasted on the road? Because remember, the speed limits are 60 on a B road if you're lucky, and 70
Or if you've got a
on the
765 LT, what kind of talent would you need to run out of that?
If your arms are straight, then you can go as fast as you like.
Guys, it's just like...
But like at what point, I would argue that 570 at 80 grand used.
Was that touring? Gentine Blue.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That's lovely. But okay, so Joe, we'll take that for
Yeah,
example.
I mean, that is more than... Oh, look at it.
But
with the chrome...
look at that Yeti.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see that?
And the Yeti.
Sorry, the Yeti is probably the most usable you could do on the road. But no,
I think... I mean, I see that's 500. I reckon 400 horsepower is a sweet spot for the road.
I don't even think you need that much.
You don't need that much, no. But I think 400, anything above that is where it gets silly.
I would make an argument, and look, I'll get defeated on this immediately, but I would make an argument that actually, if you're in terms of like utilizing the most out of a car, like a well-built, well-prepared classic Mini is as much as you need on the road.
Oh, yeah.
In the sense that it will get to 60, you'll be at the limits of the car, and you'll feel fast because the thing's about to fall apart and or break. The road's as wide as possible for you, almost like in a sense like a slow Caterham. It is everything. Above that is personal preference.
Well,
you want to be in a GT3 touring rather than you need a GT3 touring to maximize.
But then
the
you
road.
get over to Europe where the roads are better and bigger and the speed limits are less.
And we had that GT3 touring.
Then you
I would
really
have hated my
stretch
Mini
its
on that
legs.
road.
Yeah.
But the GT3 touring in Portugal was like the best thing ever. The second we got it back to the M25 in the UK, I was like, this is too loud. It's uncomfortable. I don't need to be in.
You're right. And you hit the nail on the head there. It's not just the power figure and torque figure.
No.
It's the size of the footprint, especially in the UK, where our roads, the Civic Type R that I love, the current FL5, when I had that car for a day, I loved it to bits. When I had it for a week, I loved everything about the car, but I discovered very quickly that it's wider than my M3 Touring. And what does that mean? And suddenly that ruins a lot of the car, a lot of the package, because it's a hot hatch, which have fundamentally been brilliant for the UK because they're small, but that's suddenly not small. And I think what Ped said in last week's episode is when we did the car challenge is the i20N. So that's 200 horsepower. It's light, 1150 kilos or something. It's a tiny little footprint, even by old standards. That is all you need. You could still get banged up for pushing it too hard, but it's but you could still have loads of fun. And you're right. It's like where.
Yeah,
I think that maybe that going back to the 911 resto-mod thing, as I said earlier on in the pod, I drove a 930 Turbo a couple of weeks ago, and the dealership I drove it from had a 992 GT3. They were parked next to each other.
Yeah.
Right. And the difference in size was ridiculous. And the little 930 Turbo, and the bit that amazed me about that car, and maybe thinking about it now makes me realise why resto-mods have become so successful, is that car was a 1987 car. It had 300 horsepower, 300 horsepower, and then Porsche did do a performance pack that took up to 330. 300 horsepower back in 1987. And when the boost came in, it was like a spaceship. You know that bit in Star Wars where they go into hyperspace and all the stars go whoosh? It's like that, nothing, whoosh. And it was amazing to drive. But I wouldn't have one and drive it a lot just because the infotainment system was rubbish, the pedals were horrible, all of those things made it not a great car. But if you resto-modded it and sorted some of those things out so that it was a bit more of like a modern day experience, that would be the perfect car.
Yeah, I think this should be a final question. I think this is a good one, and we haven't prepared this, so you two can't get out your laptops and show me something that you've already thought of.
One second.
No, but what's a more modern car? So let's not go back to the 60s or 70s, but like a car you would want to resto-mod, a car that you could take and you think with not ridiculous money, let's not make the whole thing carbon fiber, but like a car that you could make the best driving car possible, the kind of car that every weekend you would look forward to getting into. Let's not make it like a daily so you don't have to use it every day, but like I think there's an argument to be made, Joe, that your M2 is probably as close to a resto-mod as you might like.
Yeah,
but that's a bit too track biased.
Yeah, it's funny because I was also, before you actually mentioned that, I was thinking then there's the whole like what Swift Performance do or lots of other sort of tuning companies, it's becoming a trend. Most people do tend to use them on track and use the cars, but some people just want the cage or the rear seats removing and the better suspension on. So there's that level.
But that's modifications, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So resto-mod
but then that is restoring an older car by modifying it. So it's kind of resto-mod in it.
It comes back to my definition of what
resto-mod. But I think for me,
I would say you'd have to do body work, but it doesn't need to be carbon fiber.
For me, it would be E46 M3. I think, doing something like a Robert Mitchell build, or that sort of ilk. But again, you start putting the numbers together, and it becomes.
I mean, how much is a standard E46 M3? 20 grand?
Yeah, tidy one, 25 grand. Probably.
Okay, so let's say you buy a less than tidy one for 20 grand because you're going to mess with it anyway.
Yeah.
How much do you reckon you're going to spend on it? 30 grand?
Oh no, more.
Oh god, see that's the terrifying. Like we can't get to 100 grand with an E46 M3.
It would be 100 grand if you're gonna make it desirable. So that
now we realise why that Theon Porsche was.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're doing the maths in our heads.
We're doing the maths for them.
Yeah. So,
I guess depends what your base car is, right?
Yeah. What would yours be, Pen?
I'd Lancia Delta HF Integrale.
Oh yeah, but someone's already done that.
I think they probably have, and the challenge with those is you need to start with a decent one because otherwise they're shit because they fall apart. And a decent one of them, 60 to 80 grand now.
Yeah.
So, but they are, I've driven a couple of them, and they're just amazing things. That or something like a 205 GTI, which you might have a bit.
Tolman already do, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're I think
Escort
they're 70
Cosworth,
grand.
that'd be nice.
Again, an base Escort Cosworth, how much?
I know, right?
So you do start to see, it does. When you add the numbers up, it's like, okay.
And even Mini, actually, you said about classic Mini.
Oh, don't.
What's
David Brown
the David Brown one?
It's like 80 or 90 grand.
Yeah.
There's a story about that.
Have you seen that weather?
I know, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what tyres I'm on?
Well, I'm gonna.
Hold on, let me have a quick look.
Oh,
wait. That's bad.
And that's not me slagging off another tyre.
Yeah.
It's like me saying I'm on Cup 2s or something. There's like 2 inches of standing water out there.
We're not allowed to slag off of the tyre brands, are we? Can we not get some?
We can't. There'll be a lot of bleeping in this episode.
No, it's bad. It's bad. But we're an hour in.
Yeah,
we are.
Actually, yeah. Thanks for asking, Pete. My resto-mod car would be.
Sorry. A 912 Porsche.
No, because there's a company that do that. I think they're called.
Can't take it to them then because it needs it. Do they actually get the engine?
I think
They're called bankrupt.
They're called, I think, Car 912, and they make fully carbon fiber 912s.
Do they do gearboxes? Just go and get a gearbox that works. Yeah.
Go on then, Pat.
No, I think it would be something like a Clio 182.
Ooh.
Because making one of those, like, I know people do track builds in them, and you can make fast road cars, but I actually saw a 172. I mean, I've got a 182 that's should go in the bin, but there was it's Monaco blue on Torini wheels, and I was like, imagine if that was perfect. Like, imagine if the seating position was really good, and like it drove really well, and it cocked a wheel, and it was the perfect hot hatch. It's not too big. It's fast enough for the roads, 100, 200 brake horse. Make it 210 brake horsepower, add a bit of power. But if you made it handle, and I think, Joe, you've spoken about this, about how manufacturers can't always afford to put the best suspension or like,
no. There's
so many things you could do to just make it handle immaculately and then be an amazing driving car.
Yeah.
That's all I'd need to do, really.
We'll talk about, like, we mentioned him a number of times, shout out to Andy 47B again. So he's got all these amazing cars from Lanzantes on. He's just done a full nut and bolt restoration of a Clio Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So that's cool.
Yeah. And that's cool. Of all the cars he's got, what a car that'd be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what would you resto mod?
Yeah,
if you're listening to this, put it in the comments, or what your thoughts are on the resto mod scene. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you buy one over a brand new supercar or hypercar? If you had £1 million, would you buy yourself a SF90XX, or would you go and buy a Singer?
Yeah.
Quite a good choice, that is.
It is a good choice. I think I'd have the Singer.
I'm just going to pay for my gearbox to be fixed. I can drive the car.
And Joe's just going to quickly go to the garage and get some PS4S's put on that Porsche. Anyway, massive thanks to Pony Place for their hospitality today. And as always, a big thanks to Michelin, our title sponsor. But we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, thanks to Patrick for coming on.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Pat,
Very
we'll
good.
have to get you on again. You're quite good.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
We have no idea whether that recorded because Pat's normally behind the cameras looking at that. But all the lights are still red. Is that a good sign?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
sometimes.
Good.
So-
And that's still got red on it.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
We're good. Excellent.
Perfect.
Easy now.
Cheers, guys.